So we're going to start with number 1, 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. These are different. First of all, we still are going to look for GCF before we start. Does 2, 5, and 3 have anything in common? No. No. Okay, so there is no GCF. These are different because there is a number other than 1 in front of x squared. So we have to approach these a little bit differently. Yesterday, we were only concerned with the factors of the last term that would add or subtract to give us that middle term. Well, today, we have to not only focus on the factors of the last term, but also the factors of the first term. Okay, so here's what I would do. Before you start, after you check that you don't have a GCF, what we want to do is make a list of the factors of the first term. The first term is 2x squared, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're only going to think about the 2 right now because x squared is just x and x. What are the only numbers that multiply to give me 2? 1 and 2. Then we want to list the factors of the last term. Okay, we're not concerned with the signs. Again, the signs we'll figure out in the end. And the factors of 3 are just 1 and 3. So good news on this question, we don't have a lot of factors that we have to worry about. What we do have to worry about is the placement of these numbers. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up my 2 parentheses, and I'm going to actually talk to you about 2 different ways that you can do this because a lot of you may have learned the other method, which is fine. It just takes a little bit longer sometimes. What did we say the only factors of 2 were?
1 and 2.
1 and 2. So when I set those up, I have to put a 2x in one parenthesis and a 1x in the other, 2 and 1. Okay, 2x times x gives me that 2x squared. What we do want to keep in mind is what we're trying to do. Same thought process as yesterday. Am I trying to add or subtract? Subtract, and I want to end up with 5. Okay. So I'm going to put my factors for 1 and 3 in a position. If they don't work, then we'll have to try it again. Okay, it's kind of like a guess and check here. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to just put my 1 first and my 3 second. Okay, this may not work. We may have to erase and adjust. So if you're using a pen, you might want to get a pencil or just know that you might have to erase or scratch out and start over again. What we do is when we check these, anytime you have that number in front of your x squared, we're not just checking those terms. What we have to do is check the product. So I'm looking to subtract 5. That means this times this, what's 2x times 3? Okay. And then the 2 middle terms we multiply. 1 times x is 1x. What I want to know is, do those subtract to give me 5? Does 6x minus 1x give me 5x? It does. Okay. So we know we have our placements correct. If that didn't work, what I would do is I would switch my 1 and my 3 and try it again. Okay. But it's always the product of the first 2 and the product of the middle 2. Do those add or subtract to give you that middle term? Now it's the sign placement. Okay. And the rule is the same, but we're looking at different numbers. We talked yesterday, if that second sign is a minus, then we're going to have different signs. And the first sign goes in front of the bigger number, right? But when I'm referring to my bigger number, I'm referring to the 6x and the 1x. What's bigger? 6x. So I need that 6x to be the same as that first sign, which I just covered up with my circle, which is a plus, right? So what I need to think about is, where do I put it to make that 6 positive? Can I put it in front of the 2? No. So it's going to have to go in front of what number? The 3. So we're going to have to put the plus here. Okay, it just so happens that 3 is the bigger number over 1, and that does work majority of the time. Sometimes it doesn't, and we'll get to one of those. Which means in front of that 1, I'm going to put a minus. Okay, so we get 2x minus 1 and x plus 3. And that is the complete factored answer there. Now for the other method. And some of you, a lot of you, depending on who you have problem to, whether they taught you this or not. Some people call it the cloud method. Some people call it like a slip and slide. I don't really know. There's no real official name to it. It's just what people make up. So, again, anytime you have a number in front of x squared that we cannot pull a GCF out, there is this other method that we can use. What we're going to do is we're going to pull this first term off, and you put it out here in a little bubble. Okay, that's, I think, why they call it the cloud method, a lot of people, right? Then we write this first term without the 2. So it just becomes x squared. The middle term stays exactly the same. And then what we do is we take this number that we pulled off and we multiply it by this number. What's 2 times 3? 6. The whole point of this is to get one of those easier problems that we talked about yesterday to factor. Okay, my 2 is still part of my problem. I'm just holding it out here for a little bit. Does everybody kind of remember doing these? If anybody learned this method? All right, so what I want to do is factor this thing right here. Numbers that multiply to give me 6 and subtract to give me 5. Be careful with that. Multiply to give me 6, but subtract to give me 5, not add to give me 5. 1 and 6. Okay. Same or different? Different. Bigger number. So we're going to put a +6 and a -1. That doesn't look like the answer we got, does it? Okay, because we're not finished. My 2 is still out here floating around. I have to bring this 2 back into my problem. The way that we do that is we take this 2 and we divide both of these numbers by 2. Okay. Next thing we want to do is try to simplify. Do 1 and 2 simplify? Do they have anything in common, 1 and 2? Yeah. Does 6 over 2 simplify? It divides all the way out to be 3. Okay. Still doesn't quite look like what we have up there, does it? Because the last step is that we have to take, anytime we have a fraction left, whatever that denominator is, slides right there in front of that x. And becomes 2x minus 1 and x plus 3. Does that look like what we have up there? Yes. Yes. Okay. So this is a second option. This is a process and it's easy to follow. The problem is when we add factoring into other problems, this one takes a little bit longer than the guessing and the checking does. Okay. So it's up to you on which method you choose, which one you feel more comfortable with. I'm not going to say you have to do it one way or the other. To me, once you get used to doing the guessing and the checking and you just kind of start thinking about your numbers, to me, the guessing and checking is easier. So for the first few questions, I'm going to do both of them, both methods, and then you can decide which one you prefer. Does that make a little bit of sense? Everybody kind of okay? All right, so let's take a look at number 2. 3x squared minus 8x plus 5. First question is always the same. Do we have a GCF? No, we do not. Okay. The next step is I want you to write the factors of that first term. Just like we did on the first question, just write right above that first term. And then write the factors of the second term. We're doing the guessing and checking first, and then I'll do the other method up on the board. What are the factors of 3? 1 and 3. Okay. What are the factors of 5? 1 and 5. Good news again is we don't have a lot of options to choose from, so that takes my guessing and checking down to a minimum. Am I trying to add or subtract? Add, and I want to add to get 8. Okay. So let's start. The factors of the 3 were 3 and 1, so I'm going to put a 3x and a 1x. And then the factors of 5 are 1 and 5. So I have to try a placement. If that placement doesn't work, we will erase and try again. I'm going to put the 1 and the 5. And I'm going to check. What is 3 times 5? 15. Okay. If we're trying to add to get 8, isn't 15 already too much? Okay. So what that tells me is this placement is not going to work. I don't need to switch the 3 and the 1, but I can switch the 1 and the 5. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to erase those. And I'm going to try again, which means I'm going to put the 5 first and the 1 second. And I'm going to see if that works. If this doesn't work, then we would say it's prime because we've tried every option. But if it does work, then we can place our signs and be finished. Product of the outside was 3x times 1. Okay. Product of the inside, 5x. Does 3x and 5x add to give me 8? Yes. Are my signs supposed to be the same or different? The same. And they're both going to be the same as the first sign, which is minus. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite it so it looks a little bit nicer. So my factored answer is going to be 3x minus 5 and x minus 1. Now I'm going to do it the other way so you can see that. And you can decide which one you like better. That is completely up to you. We already know we don't have a GCF, so the first step is we take that 3 off and we put it in our little cloud out here. The first term goes without the 3. Middle term stays the same. And we multiply this 3 by that 5 to give me 15. Now we have one of those easier trinomials to factor like we did yesterday. Numbers that multiply to give me 15 and add to give me 8. What multiplies to give me 15 and adds to give me 8? Same signs, both negative. But we can't forget about this. And this is where also this method messes you up if you forget your GCF too. So that's something we also want to keep in mind that could happen here. So we need to now bring our 3 back in. So we're going to divide each one of these numbers by 3. If it reduces, we can reduce. Does 3 over 3 reduce? All the way to 1. Does 3 over 5 or 5 over 3 reduce? No. Okay. This one is good because it's not a fraction, so I'm just going to bring that down. And then we're going to take that denominator and we're going to slide it right there in front of that x. That's in the same parentheses. And even though we wrote it the order differently, doesn't that mean the same thing? So again, it's up to you which method you choose. I don't care. Is everybody kind of okay with that? All right. Let's do 3 together, and then I'll let you try 4. Remember, the very first question we're going to ask ourselves is, do we have a GCF? Do 4, 8, and 3 have something in common? Yeah. Okay. So the next step is to list the factors of the first term. All of my factors are 4. What are they?
1, 4, 2.
Yep. 1 and 4, 2 and 2. So we have more options this time. And then we're going to list the factors of the last term. The factors of 3 are 1 and 3. You would do the guess and check first, then I'll do the other method up here on the board. When you're doing the guessing and the checking, not specifically with the smaller numbers like 4, but when you get into some larger numbers, like say 24 or 12 or, anything that's relatively bigger than some of the smallest numbers, most of the time, 1 in that number does not work, okay? Not all of the times. So you just pick one to start with. So I'm going to start with the 1 and the 4, okay? We're going to try this one first. I'm going to play some, and you might want to just watch for a minute instead of writing all this down, okay? I just want to kind of talk you through the process. All right, I'm going to try the 1 and 3. I'm going to place that as well. And keep in mind, we're trying to add to get 8. So let's multiply the outside 2. What does that give me? 12. That's already too much, isn't it? So I don't even need to finish that. So what I would do first is I would erase the 1 and the 3, and I would switch them and see if that's going to help me. Try the outside products. 4 times 1 is 4. Then we try the inside products. That gives me 3. Does 4 and 3 add to give me 8? No. So I tried 1 and 4 with both versions of 1 and 3, and neither of those worked. So that tells me that 1 and 4 is not going to be the option here, which only leaves me with what? 2 and 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase that 1 and 4, and I'm going to try it with a 2 and a 2. Good news is those are the same numbers, so it wouldn't do any good to switch the 3 and the 1 because they're going to be the same here. So let's try again. What's 2 times 1? 2. And then the inside products, 3 times 2 is 6. Do those add to give me 8? Yes. Okay. Are my signs the same or different? Same. And they're both going to be positive. Good. So my factored answer looks like that. And again, I'm going to show you the same method up here on the board. So remember, first term comes off in the little cloud. Write that first term without that number. Middle term stays the same. 4 times 3 gives me 12. Then I'm looking at factoring this. Numbers that multiply to give me 12 and add to give me 8. Same signs, both positive. Everybody following me so far? Now we've got to bring our 4 back in, so we're going to divide both of these by 4. Remember, we always want to try to reduce before we move things to the front. When you're factoring, whatever's inside your parentheses, like inside of one set of parentheses, can't have anything in common. They can't share a number. They can't share 2. They can't share 3. They can't share anything like that. Okay, so it's important that we reduce. What do 6 and 4 both divide by? 2. So that turns into, it doesn't go to a whole number, but it turns into a smaller fraction, 3 over 2. And then 2 and 4 can both reduce by 2 as well. So that's going to turn into 1 over 2. And then again, if you have fractions left, we take the denominators and we slide them to the front of the x. Everything else stays the same. And that is exactly what we had doing it the guess and check method. Okay, I want you to try 4. Okay, this one is the harder of the two just because you have more numbers to work with. More to think about. If you don't like the guessing and the checking, do it the way that I did it on the board. That is up to you. I'm giving you options on which one you like better. Some people like guessing and checking better. Some people like the cloud method better. I'm not trying to make you do it one way or the other. As long as you can get it factored, that's all I care about. these, because we have two pairs of factors for our leading term and our last term, there's going to be a little bit more guessing and checking here. Do we have a GCF? No. Okay. So my factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. Factors of 15 are 1 and 15 and 3 and 5, correct? What are we trying to do, add or subtract? Add. We're trying to add to get 17. So we can kind of think about this as far as which numbers we want to try, which ones we don't. I'm going to start with the 1 and the 4. Okay? Now, let's just think about this. If I'm trying to add to get 17, do you think I should try 1 and 15 with 1 and 4? No, because if I add 15 and 4, that's already too big, right? So I'm pretty sure that 1 and 15 won't work if 1 and 4 do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with trying the 3 and the 5 with that first. If this works, great. If it doesn't, then we can try something else. So I'm going to put my 4x and my 1x. I'm going to place my 3 and my 5, and I'm going to try. What's 4 times 5? 20, which is already too big, right? So that's not going to work in that case. So I'm going to erase those, and I'm going to switch. I'm going to put my 5 first and my 3 second and see if this works. What's 4 times 3? 12. And 5 times 1 is, does 12 and 5 add to give me 17? It does. Okay, so I know I got it right. Luckily, the 1 and the 4 worked. My signs are going to be the same, and they're both going to be negative. Okay. Or, I'll do this one more time this way, and then y'all can just pick which way you want to do it. So 4 comes off. Rewrite the first term without it. Whoops. Middle term stays the same. 15 times 4 is 60. So I want numbers that multiply to give me 60 and add to give me 17. If I'm not sure, I can make my list. 1 and 60 doesn't work. 2 and 30 doesn't work. 3 and 20 doesn't work. Those subtract to give me 17, but I need to add. 4 goes in 15 times. That doesn't work. 5 goes in 12 times. Those add, right? Okay, same signs, both negative. And then we're going to bring that 4 in. Can't forget about that 4. That does not reduce. I'm going to leave it for just a minute. 12 divided by 4 reduces all the way to be 3. And then I'm going to take that 4 and I'm going to slide it in front of that x. And that is the same answer we got. Are we feeling kind of okay with these? All right. Try 5. We'll do 6 together. 6 is going to confuse people a little bit. So we'll do that one. So go ahead and try 5. Remember on these, when you have that extra number, when you're looking at the bigger sign. All right, 6x squared, 7x, and 10. They all have something in common. No. All right, so 1 and 6, 2 and 3, 1 and 10, 2 and 5. I am trying to subtract to get 7 here. So I'm going to start my guessing and checking, and you don't have to, you're just kind of watching at this point because you've already tried it. I'm going to try my 6x and my 1x. If I try the 1 and the 10, remember how I told you that in your parentheses you can't have common terms? Okay. So that is going to also help me with my placement. If I'm trying 1 and 10, which number is not allowed to go in the same parentheses as 6, 1 or 10? 10, because they have a 2 in common, right? So that is not going to work. So if it is going to work with this, then the 1 would have to go here and the 10 would have to go here. If I multiply there, that's 60. That's 1. That does not subtract to give me 7, right? Okay. Which means if I'm using 6 and 1, 10 and 1 is not going to work. So then I'm going to try my 2 and my 5. But again, thinking about your terms, which number cannot go in the same parenthesis with 6? The 2. So if it's going to work, 5 has to go here and 2 has to go here. We'll try that. What is 6 times 2? 12. And 5 times 1 is 5. That does subtract to give me 7. Where we need to be very careful is the placement of our signs. My signs are going to be different here. And my bigger number needs to be positive. But I'm talking about the bigger product, 12 or 5. Not the individual numbers, not the 5 and the 2, but the 12 and the 5. I need that 12 to be positive. So where am I going to put the plus sign? In front of the 5 or in front of the 2? In front of the 2. Perfect. And so that's what we get, 6x minus 5 and x plus 2. Okay. So again, if you're using the guessing and the checking, a lot of the times you aren't allowed to put numbers in a parenthesis because they're going to share something. So that eliminates some of your possibilities. All right, let's do 6. We'll do one more. This one is different because I not only have numbers everywhere, I also have 2 different variables. And for some reason, this makes people get real confused, and it's really not too much different. What's the first question we always ask? Okay. Do all of these terms have something in common? Yeah. Yes. What do they have? A 2. So let's pull that out first. So that's going to leave me with x squared plus 4y. Nope. Try that one more time. Plus 4xy minus 5y squared. Good news. In the parentheses, do I have a number in front of x squared anymore? No. So this makes it like the questions that we did yesterday, the ones that are easier to factor. Don't let the x, y, or the y squared throw you off. I'm focusing on my numbers only. I want numbers that multiply to give me 5 and subtract to give me 4. 1 and 5. Okay, so keep your 2. Set up your parentheses. We break up x squared, just x and x like we did before. But in this problem, the 5 has a what with it? A negative, but also a y squared. So when I do my factors 1 and 5, I'm going to have to include a y with that. So it is a 1y and a 5y. You just stick that second variable on the back of it. I'll show you where the xy comes from in just a second. Are my signs going to be the same or different? Different. And the first sign, okay, that shows me they're different, maybe. The first sign goes in front of the bigger number. What's bigger, 1 or 5? 5. So we're going to put a plus 5 and a minus. Okay. And that's how we're going to leave our answer. But I want to talk to you about, people are like, where does that xy come from? think about if you were multiplying that back out, okay? If you multiply x times 5, sorry, I'm not even worried about the 2 right now. I'm just trying to show you where the xy comes from. If my pen would write, might be beneficial. Oh, come on. If I multiply x times 5y, what does that give me? 5xy. So that's where the xy comes from, is being multiplying those two middle terms. Okay. I was like, I was looking, I was like, I don't even know where that came from. My paper got mixed up in mine. Oh. So sorry. I hope so. I'm not getting my hopes up. Unfortunately, I'm afraid we might not win again all year. Think about like multiplying this out in order for it to